The scream pierces through the thin walls of apartment 4B like shattered glass cutting through silence. It's not the first scream Maya has released into the suffocating darkness of this cramped space, and it won't be the last. But tonight, something in that cry carries a different weight, raw desperation mixed with the dying embers of hope that maybe, just maybe, someone will hear her. The belt strikes again. Leather against tender skin. 7-year-old Maya presses her face into the threadbare carpet, tasting salt and dust as tears pool beneath her cheek. The worn fibers scratch against her face like sandpaper, but even this rough texture feels gentler than the hands that are supposed to protect her. "You worthless little pest," growls Derek, her stepfather, his voice thick with the stench of cheap whiskey and cigarettes. His shadow looms over her small frame like a thundercloud ready to unleash another storm. "Your mother should have never brought you into this house." Maya's mother, Linda, stands frozen in the doorway of their bedroom, her silhouette trembling like a leaf caught in a hurricane. She clutches the doorframe with white knuckles, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. No words come. They never do. Linda learned long ago that speaking up only makes Derek's rage burn hotter, only makes the nights longer and darker. The apartment smells of stale beer, burnt coffee, and something else. Something Maya is too young to name but old enough to recognize as the scent of dreams slowly dying. The walls seem to close in tighter each day, painted in a sickly yellow that has faded to the color of old bruises. Pictures that once held smiling faces now hang crooked, their glass cracked like spider webs, reflecting a family that exists only in fragments. Maya has learned to count Derek's footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, each one a promise of pain. 1, 2, 3, he's moving toward the kitchen. 4, 5, 6, he's reaching for another bottle. 7, silence. In these moments of quiet, Maya allows herself to breathe, to dream of somewhere else, anywhere else. School becomes her sanctuary, though she carries her secrets like stones in her pockets. When Mrs. Patterson, her teacher, asks about the bruise peeking from beneath her sleeve, Maya has practiced her lies until they flow like water. "I fell off my bike. I bumped into the door. I'm just clumsy." Each fabrication tastes bitter on her tongue, but the truth would taste worse. It would taste like betrayal, like abandonment, like the end of the only home she's ever known. The other children laugh and play during recess, their voices bright and carefree as birdsong. Maya sits alone on the rusted swing set, pumping her legs mechanically, trying to swing high enough to touch the clouds. If she could just reach them, she thinks, maybe she could climb up and disappear into their soft, white embrace. Winter arrives early that year, blanketing the city in a cruel, deceptive beauty. Snow falls like confetti celebrating sorrows Maya cannot understand. The heating in their apartment fails, and Derek refuses to call the landlord. "Build character," he sneers, watching Maya shiver in her thin pajamas. She learns to sleep curled in a ball, her breath visible in the frigid air, dreaming of warm places that exist only in the storybooks she borrows from the school library. Food becomes another weapon in Derek's arsenal of control. The refrigerator stands like a fortress, its contents rationed by mood and malice. Maya learns to recognize the sound of her own hunger, a hollow, gnawing echo that follows her through the halls of school, sits beside her during math class, and keeps her company during the long, empty afternoons when other children go home to hot meals and loving arms. One particularly bitter February evening, Maya makes the mistake of asking for a second slice of bread. The request hangs in the air like smoke, visible and suffocating. Derek's fork pauses midway to his mouth, and Maya realizes she has stepped into a trap she didn't know she was setting. "Second slice." His voice drops to a whisper that somehow sounds louder than shouting. "You think food grows on trees, you ungrateful little leech?" The slap comes swift and sharp, the sound echoing off the kitchen walls like a gunshot. Maya's head snaps to the side, her cheek blooming with heat and shame. Linda gasps from her chair but doesn't move, doesn't speak, doesn't defend. She simply stares at her plate, counting peas as if they hold the answers to prayers she's too afraid to voice. That night, Maya lies on her mattress, a thin, lumpy thing that serves as her bed on the living room floor, and listens to the apartment breathe around her. The pipes groan like wounded animals. The refrigerator hums a lonely lullaby. Somewhere in the walls, mice skitter and scratch, fellow prisoners in this house of broken promises. She runs her fingers along the patterns the belt has left on her arms and back, tracing them like a map of territories she never wanted to explore. Each mark tells a story: the night she accidentally broke Derek's favorite mug, the evening she laughed too loudly at a cartoon, the morning she forgot to make her bed. Her body has become a diary of disappointments, written in a language only she can read. The apartment building itself seems to conspire in her isolation. The neighbors have learned to turn up their televisions when the shouting starts, to close their windows when the screaming begins. Mrs. Chen from 4A hurries past their door with her eyes downcast, her groceries clutched tight to her chest like armor. Mr. Rodriguez from 4C pretends not to see the bruises when he passes Maya in the hallway, his whistling growing louder as if music could drown out the truth. Spring should bring hope, but Maya has forgotten what hope tastes like. The flowers blooming in the courtyard below their window mock her with their beauty, their petals soft and unmarked, their stems reaching always toward the light. She watches them through the grimy glass, wondering what it would feel like to grow toward something instead of away from everything. It's on a particularly warm April afternoon that everything changes. Maya is sitting on the fire escape, her legs dangling through the metal railings, watching the world move below like a movie she's not allowed to be part of. The sun warms her face, and for a moment, she allows herself to imagine she's somewhere else. A beach maybe, or a garden where no one raises their voice, where no one raises their hand. The sound of arguing drifts up from the apartment directly below. But these aren't the familiar sounds of her own household's dysfunction. These voices are different. One calm and measured, the other defensive and sharp. Maya leans forward, trying to catch the words that float up through the afternoon air. "Sir, I understand your concerns, but the complaints we've received are quite serious," says a voice she doesn't recognize. It's a man's voice, deep and steady, with an accent that speaks of education and authority. There have been multiple reports of disturbances and, frankly, some allegations that require investigation. The defensive voice belongs to Derek. Maya would recognize that tone anywhere, the same one he uses when the landlord comes asking about rent, when her mother questions his spending, when Maya herself dares to exist too loudly in his presence. "I don't know what lies people are spreading, but this is harassment," Derek's voice carries clearly through the thin floors. "I got rights. We got privacy. You can't just come in here making accusations." Maya presses her ear against the fire escape's metal grating, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Someone is asking questions. Someone is listening. For the first time in months, Maya feels something flutter in her chest that might be hope. The conversation below grows more heated. Maya can hear her mother's voice now, high and nervous, trying to smooth over the tension like she always does, like she tried to do with Maya's father before he left, like she tries to do with everyone who might see too much or ask too many questions. "Mr. Harrison," the unfamiliar voice continues, and Maya commits the name to memory. Harrison, like the son in one of her library books. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here because I care about the welfare of children. I've made it my business to care." The words hit Maya like a physical force. Someone cares. Someone has made caring their business. She doesn't know who this Harrison is, but his voice carries something she hasn't heard in so long she'd forgotten it existed. Genuine concern wrapped in the kind of authority that can't be shouted down or slapped away. "You got no business here," Derek snarls, and Maya can picture his face, red with rage and beer, his hands clenched into the fists she knows so well. "This is my family. My house. My rules." "Actually," Harrison replies, his voice never rising, never wavering, "when it comes to child welfare, it becomes everyone's business. And I have considerable resources at my disposal to ensure that business is properly conducted." Maya doesn't understand all the words, but she understands the tone. There's power in this stranger's voice, the kind of power that doesn't need to shout to be heard, doesn't need to strike to be felt. It's the opposite of Derek's volatile authority. It's steady, unmovable, like mountains or ocean tides. A door slams below. Heavy footsteps echo in the hallway. Maya scrambles back through her own apartment's window, her heart racing as she tries to process what she's just heard. Someone is asking questions. Someone with resources, with power, with the kind of voice that makes Derek defensive instead of aggressive. That evening, Derek paces the apartment like a caged animal, his agitation filling every corner of their small space. He throws his beer bottles harder into the trash, slams cabinet doors with unnecessary force, and his eyes keep darting to the windows as if expecting invasion. Linda scurries around him, trying to stay invisible, while Maya makes herself smaller than air, practically dissolving into the furniture. "Some rich do-gooder thinks he can come into my home," Derek mutters, his words slurred with alcohol and fury. "Thinks his money gives him the right to judge how I run my family. Well, he's got another thing coming." But beneath Derek's bravado, Maya detects something she's never heard before: fear. It's subtle, hidden beneath layers of rage and righteousness, but it's there. Derek is afraid, and fear makes him more dangerous than anger ever could. The next few days pass in a tense calm, like the air before a thunderstorm. Derek watches the windows more carefully, answers the door more slowly, and his treatment of Maya grows even more unpredictable. One moment he ignores her completely, the next he explodes over the smallest infractions. It's as if he's trying to squeeze all his rage into the spaces between potential interruptions. Maya finds herself listening more carefully to the sounds of the building, hoping to catch that calm, steady voice again. She learns to recognize the difference between footsteps, the hurried click of Mrs. Chen's heels, the shuffling scuff of Mr. Rodriguez's worn boots, the confident stride of someone new, someone who doesn't belong to the choreography of their broken building. It's on a gray Thursday morning that the knock comes. Not the hesitant tap of neighbors or the aggressive pounding of bill collectors, but something in between: firm, patient, persistent. Maya is alone in the apartment, having been kept home from school because the bruises on her neck have darkened to shades that makeup can't hide. Through the peephole, she sees him for the first time. A tall man in a well-tailored coat, his hair silver at the temples, his eyes the kind of blue that reminds her of the sky in her library book's illustrations. He doesn't look like anyone from their building, from their neighborhood, from their world. He looks like someone from the outside, someone who has never learned that doors stay locked and questions go unasked. Maya knows she's not supposed to answer the door. Derek's rules are clear about strangers. But something in this man's patient stance, in the way he waits without knocking again, makes her fingers move toward the locks almost against her will. The door opens slowly, and Harrison, for she somehow knows this must be Harrison, looks down at her with eyes that see everything in an instant. The fading bruises, the too thin frame, the way she holds herself like someone expecting a blow. His face changes, something softening and hardening at the same time. "Hello there," he says, and his voice is even gentler than it was during the argument she overheard. "I'm Thomas Harrison. I've been hoping to meet you." Maya stares at him, unable to form words. Adults don't usually want to meet her. Adults usually want her to disappear, to be quiet, to take up less space. But this man looks at her like she matters, like her presence is something worthy of hope. "Is your stepfather home?" Harrison asks, though his eyes never leave Maya's face, cataloging each mark, each shadow, each sign of the war being waged in this small apartment. Maya shakes her head, still unable to trust her voice. Derek is at his morning job at the loading dock, won't be back until evening. Linda is at the grocery store, counting coins for bread and milk, stretching dollars that never stretch far enough. "Would you like to talk to me for a minute?" Harrison asks, and there's something in his tone that makes it clear this is an invitation, not a command. "Just talk. Nothing scary. Nothing that will get you in trouble." And Maya, who has learned that talking leads to trouble, who has been taught that her voice is something to be silenced and her thoughts something to be ashamed of, nods. Because sometimes, when hope has been beaten down so far it's almost forgotten how to breathe, it takes just one person asking the right question in the right way to help it remember how to rise. Harrison steps into their apartment, and Maya sees it suddenly through his eyes: the stained carpet, the holes in the walls, the smell of desperation that clings to everything like smoke. But he doesn't wrinkle his nose or step carefully around the broken places. He simply closes the door behind him and asks the question that changes everything. Maya, he says, and hearing her name spoken with such careful respect makes her want to cry, "Are you safe here?" The question hangs in the air between them, heavier than all of Derek's threats, more powerful than all of Linda's silence. It's a question that demands truth, that deserves honesty, that offers the possibility of something Maya has almost forgotten exists: rescue. 3 hours later, when Derek returns home to find Thomas Harrison sitting at his kitchen table with Maya beside him, the world explodes into the kind of confrontation that will echo through the building for weeks to come. "Get out of my house," Derek roars, his face purpling with rage and disbelief. "Get out now before I call the cops." Harrison stands slowly, his movements deliberate and calm, like someone who has faced down more dangerous men than Derek and found them wanting. "I think," he says quietly, "that we should discuss what's best for Maya." "What's best for Maya is none of your damn business," Derek snarls, advancing across the small room. "She's my kid now, and I'll discipline her how I see fit." "Actually," Harrison replies, reaching into his jacket pocket and producing a folder that seems to materialize hope out of thin air, "Maya isn't your child. She's Linda's child. And according to the documentation I've gathered, there are several legal avenues we could pursue to ensure her safety." The folder hits the table with a soft thud that sounds like thunder in the small apartment. Derek stares at it as if it might explode, and in many ways it has. Maya doesn't understand all the legal terms Harrison begins to recite, but she understands the power in his voice, the way Derek's bluster crumbles like a house of cards in a strong wind. "You can't just take her," Derek says, but his voice has lost its bite, replaced by something desperate and pathetic. "Linda won't let you. She's her mother." "Linda," Harrison says gently, looking toward the doorway where Maya's mother has appeared, "deserves the chance to choose what's best for her daughter. And I believe, when presented with options, she'll make the right choice." The conversation that follows is a blur of adult voices and legal terms, of threats and promises, of Linda's tears and Derek's gradually deflating rage. But through it all, Maya sits beside Thomas Harrison, feeling for the first time in her memory the presence of someone who stands between her and harm, someone who speaks for her when she cannot speak for herself. As the sun sets through their grimy windows, painting the apartment in shades of gold and amber that make even the broken places look beautiful, Thomas Harrison kneels beside Maya's chair and speaks to her with the kind of respect usually reserved for adults. "Maya," he says, "I want you to know that you have choices now. You have people who care about you, who want to see you safe and happy. It might take some time, and it might be scary sometimes, but you don't have to be afraid anymore." Maya looks into his eyes, kind eyes, patient eyes, eyes that have seen enough of the world to recognize both its cruelties and its possibilities, and nods. For the first time in longer than she can remember, the word that forms on her lips is not an apology or an excuse, but something far more powerful. "Okay," she whispers, and in that single word lies the promise of mornings without fear, of meals shared without tension, of nights where sleep comes easily and dreams dare to be beautiful. But as Thomas Harrison gathers his papers and prepares to leave, promising to return tomorrow with more help, more options, more hope, Maya catches sight of Derek's face in the reflection of the darkening window. His expression isn't defeated, it's calculating. And in that moment, she realizes that even with heroes and hope and the promise of rescue, some battles are just beginning. The apartment falls silent after Harrison's departure, but it's not the peaceful quiet of resolution. It's the ominous calm before a storm that threatens to be more devastating than any that has come before. Maya pulls her thin blanket around her shoulders and settles onto her mattress, but sleep feels more elusive than ever. Because now she knows what it feels like to be seen, to be heard, to matter. And that knowledge, beautiful and terrifying as it is, has awakened something in her that can never again be silenced, no matter what storms may come.